that they offer. And
I am recording.
it's like an embedded self-critique. Somehow they say all of us who care about minorities and participation in higher ed and academic success in higher ed, who write about how to support African Americans and Latinos and blah, 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 we're still not doing enough because we're still contained within the traditional research kind of thing. And we're not accounting, that's sort of verbatim, we're not accounting for the structural inequalities that are behind it. So somehow I felt that the call was opening to research that accounts for the structural inequalities. So my reflection that I share with Paula after reading, Amanda, it's not going to be anything new to you in terms of, I think that one of the critiques, when we look at all the work that has been done institutionally in higher ed, and let's just take the example of the UCF. I'm sure that we will find many more examples. And when we have LGBTQ office affairs, let's call it, minorities affairs. Then we have homes, which is supposed to be the lead of the African American support group. And this is very ideological. This is what I told Paula. Why I never bought into that is because I think that you get played when you divide all these groups, and then we start doing research for these specific groups, and we create policies for these specific groups. When, according to their analysis, according to me, there are structures of inequality that affects all the groups equally. And if you take them as common causes that makes, which is poverty, which is exploitation, economic exploitation, social exploitation, territorial isolation in terms of where people live, we always end up that it affects in different ways, different groups, just because you connect the structural inequality, social class, with cultural elements. Of course, the way it's going to be represented in the African American community is going to be different because the history, the cultural history is different, but the root cause is the same one. The way it's going to look in terms of LGBTQ community is going to be different, but the root cause is the same one. So this capacity to divide and make compartments of each group to create specific policies for each group looks very nice and all, because we're helping minorities to, think or get integrated, identified, and succeed academically. And nobody addresses the root cause, which is the same one for everybody. Why I say that? I mean, this is a very rough analysis, but when we look at that, we don't have African American communities in Chile. But Paula, now that she's familiar with Chilean universities, the root cause is the same. It just takes a different form. So this super specialization about I'm going to do any kind of minority specific research, and even if we're like, we're good-hearted in terms of we mean well and we try to promote the well-being and the academic success, plays into the game of let's keep them separate, let's keep like scratching the surface of the way that it affects them, because if we reveal and we do the research in terms of the structural inequality, what they're calling for, we'll find that it's not different. That's why I tell Amanda, it's not about race.
No.
Well, so I hear what you're saying. And I definitely understand the point. So, are you arguing that we should not? Do you want us to argue that that higher education would benefit from not separating the programming or practices that we do to support these? I'm just wondering because, like, big disruption. There's
You're
so
not
much.
giving them power. You're diminishing the power in a way. If you separate, you don't give them power.
No, I'm not saying that.
But I'm just wondering.
I'm saying is that so far, again, we're trying to do something conceptual. So
Right.
we jumped into the what would be the policy repercussion. So it means that in practical terms, we shouldn't have those. No, I'm not saying that. We might think in different terms and end up with the specific services to support different kinds of students, probably. However, what the call they're doing is for trying to think research in a different way. So I'm trying to, instead of having the repercussion of practical terms for policies and services, what would be the repercussion if this is like the ontology, the problem is this structural inequality, the problem is not African American history, the problem is not Latino history, the problem is not gender, the problem is not socioeconomics. If ontologically we think there is one common root, which is what they mentioned, how we address research to account for not this partitioning and fragmentation of oppressed people. So, and again, this is just, I don't do drugs and I don't drink, so it's just out of the spur of the moment thing. My imagination took me to, what if research, if we change the paradigm, looks specifically at the structure, and when we do support services for students, we don't do the intersectional analysis that is classical in terms of, oh, this is female, gender, African American intersection. Because the intersection is like, oh, we found that in a second plane, things start coming together and overlap, so we look at the complexity of the issue. Instead, ex ante, we say, all of them are intersected from origin. Then they split. So if I have to say what are the needs, this is the example I gave Paula. Transfer students. Okay. So if I have to do focus group interviews, biographies, whatever, what do we normally do in terms of, most people separate them. So women STEM, African Americans, Latinos, or the other one is like socioeconomics. So poor kids from high school in Orlando or whatever. And then we look at transformation. What if we switch ideologically the research design process? The question was for Paula, if I want to do research, and this is just, we're playing with ideas, about the experience of transfer students from African American transfer students to UCF, who do I ask? Who do I choose? We go to sampling of any kind, representative or purposeful, whatever. But we decide. And because it's structurally correct for the research design process. However, if we ask them who has their voice, who knows better about their transfer experience? Could it be their family? Could it be the people in the high school? Could it be some of them that they choose? Could it be all of them assembly-like? You see, because somehow the research structures contain the power structures. We know better, they know shit. Mm-hmm. We are well-intentioned. We care about... So, and I know that all of us have done it. Then you can, if you do content thematic analysis, then you go back and ask them, do you agree with my conclusions? So normally it's like, we have the gesture, we care. And we call them participants because quantitative call them subjects. And we're human population. All that care. We have all that political correctness embedded in. But bottom line, there is still guinea pigs. They're subject for our, and we play the game of publication research. I'm talking about the big we, not just the few. So the another element that I added is like the research design should be participatory in the most transgressive way. I mean, it's not their voice that I use, it's their voice all along.
You invented that transgressive participatory research. That's new. I have never read about that before.
No, but what I told Paula is that I was trying to look for information today. Try to use the example of environmental projects. I mean, you have to pass environmental impact assessment for any kind of project, from a dam, from the duct in whatever, Wyoming to move oil. So the question there is this good for everybody or not? Is this going to affect the people that own the place? So in many places, this is international standard, before you're going to dig a mine, you ask people. Before it was just getting the experts to evaluate the situation and report. Now it's the actual community in whatever way they assemble and assess. And if they say these are religious sites and we don't want to be touched because it's important for us, then the project has to change or it cannot be done. So the impact evaluation on those who we care should be included. And should be included.
The impact, the influence.
Assessment. Again, I'm inventing shit. So it's just ideas I'm putting out there, and there's a standard in terms of participation. We shouldn't be writing research if it's not going to benefit them. That's bottom line.
I agree with that.
I mean, so the rest is just bullshit. All the discourse, the narratives about we care and the topics, but when we go down to get dirty doing the actual research, they're just subjects. And I titled my dissertation "The Voice of the Non-Traditional Students." Never saw them again. I never had an impact. So somehow introduce a standard of participation that at the same time, just like environmental projects, has to participation all along that guarantees
standard. A description. No standard, a description. No, that's a neoliberalism. No standard, no. A description of participation.
We write it, we fight about the words, but I just need to convey my ideas so I can
your ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and the political part of it.
Yeah.
Paula, and I know that Amanda knows it well, is that I have no idea what participation produces. Because when you allow participation, it gets out of hand in terms of you lose control. And sometimes you like them. I mean, I imagine Amanda going downtown and talking to the neighbors and all that. They come up with shit you never thought about. And sometimes they're very inconvenient because you thought this was going to be easy 2-3 steps and you're going to close it. So I'm convinced that participation is good because it has a value in itself. And normally it will guarantee that the project will serve those who we are researching and we're supposed to promote them. So if we transfer that to any population of students in higher ed, even faculty, you see, Tintron asking me to go with a Latino faculty, and then we have African Americans, and then you have all the quotas that transfer. And I'm convinced all the quotas are for co-optation, for nothing like that. If not, ask Amanda and her boss. So if you open up authentic participation, and I'm using the example of Amanda's department because we were there when they invited the candidate and we played the game of participation and had been already selected. This is at every level, in every university. That's why I call it terms like that, like authentic participation, where we are on equal terms, democratic equal terms with the participants. Okay? How this can take form, I'm not even close to that yet. I'm just trying to spit out some principles that might respond to the call, that's all. On the transgressive, out of the edge, sort of realm.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was even clear enough to understand. But
Yes.
well,
Well, what I explained to Marcelo, this is, there are already attempts to doing this in action research, of course, with different levels of participation and authenticity of participation. We know that that can be moving sands as to how authentic participation is. But there are many experiences around the world, and it's being done today, and it has been.
Marcelo asked when he was saying, like, what is the value of participatory research and how do we really use it? The real answer, to be honest with you, outside of like all of the nice stuff, like, oh, we're centering their voice and this, that, and the other, is nothing, right? Because what ends up happening is that what the participants want are generally in conflict with what we intend to do, what we want to do. So that's one of the major issues. And we don't address it, right? What we do is we attack the methodology and we say, oh, it's better to do a quantitative versus a qualitative. But I like this whole idea of, I'm not sold on the anti-separation of minority groups.
I know it. I mean, that's fine. That's why I said I'm not. The policy might be the same one. And I would hope that the election next week would have made it more clear that it's something. I mean, at the root, as a root source.
But why, Amanda? But what is the idea, Amanda?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know what I would insert there, but I just feel like there are a couple of different things that. So one of the things that they always talk about in education is like how there's similarities between urban students and what they need to be supported in and rural students, right? And one of the things that end up, to me, being the biggest difference between those two groups when we stop looking at money as a factor or access to material resource is culture, right? So and if we don't include culture, giving someone who lives in Paramore $5 so they can eat and get access to a bus to go to school will look very different if you give a person in Christmas, Florida, the same resources to do it. Which is why I really like Ben Simone's, work on equity, right? Because she distills it a lot and gives you key factors that you have to look at. But I think that goes back into the argument of like the way you provide even programming policy to support these different groups is going to look different because of the culture.
That's what I tried to say. I know I was probably very confusing, but what I said, there is a root cause that it gets filtered through culture that makes it be expressed different. But and the answer to the example, I mean, I completely agree with you, 100%. And even if we are more nuances, not only rural, urban, gender, race, all that plays a role. But it would be, those differences are immaterial if you're in a rural community and you are the owner of the fucking former plantation. Or if you are Latino and live in Miami and you're super wealthy, it doesn't matter. That's why I say there is a root source that gets filtered, that gets tinted by culture. But rich people are going to support the power structure regardless of race, gender. That's why we have blacks in the Republican Party and Latinos in the Republican Party and queer people in the Republican Party and gay Republicans. Otherwise, that couldn't be explained. So I completely agree with you. Why I was putting the emphasis there is because the call mentions the structural inequality at the basis. And that's their critique. And I thought it was really interesting that people like Hurtado were doing this self-criticism. We're not addressing the real thing. And the introduction of the call is COVID and riots and all that have sort of unveiled something that has always been
there.
Well, I mean, and to me, at a point that Anthony Jack, who wrote the book The Privileged Poor, where he talks about like we need to go beyond looking at the financial needs of students because, for example, academically, right, they may be well able to support being successful in school, right? But when you think about the social structure of going to an Ivy League, he used in this example, an Ivy League school, and all you've ever done is be a first generation poor student, your problem isn't going to be going to class, completing the class, and getting an A. You know, so I mean, he calls it being like the privilege. You have the privilege of having access to all these great opportunities, but you still walk in the door as a poor person. You know, so that's why. But I mean, whatever you decide to do, I'm on board. You know, I just see anti-separation of minority groups, and I'm just like, well, it's a bad thing to separate them.
Yeah, and I'm not equating all the different groups at all. That's why I said at the beginning, the policy might be still catering to specific needs and specific historical trajectory cultures. I mean, that specificity is part of diversity. There is a want to.
But also the lenses that capitalism really gives us the idea that money is the means to buy everything, really. So
in the conversation, there are two stages, not two levels. One is this what we're doing now? It's like, are we understanding more or less the problem? Do we agree ideologically how to look at it? Somehow we're doing a live diagnosis. The second thing is like, can we transfer that? Because otherwise we fall in the same trap. Yeah, we should change everything, but okay, they're asking for new ideas for research. So that's why I say, how do we transfer this radical position now to research? And one of the things I thought was participatory, or that a project has to have a verifiable impact. And then I thought maybe, so otherwise if you not get funded and your method is going to be altered by participation. And how do you account for that without reducing the quality of the research? It's still method. So that's why I was saying, we sort of agree ideologically how to look at it, but then, okay, so we cannot go and do research again with zero impact, with zero, or just treating them nicely, but still subjects, because I need to publish. I'm being cynical about it, but then simplifying the argument. But it's like that second stage, okay, so what do we do about it? And I'm not saying that, again, then we propose that a university only funds verifiable impact projects. No, maybe students in education should practice that kind of research. So the bottom proposal is, okay, what do we do with future, I don't know, doctoral students in education? That might be the only proposal in there. So every new dissertation has to contribute to something. Remember, Amanda, that in many of our conversations, we talked about a university in Chicago that they had living in the neighborhoods, and then they had community leaders to go and teach formal classes, but not professors. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And of course, that was a radical socialist things from the 70s that sort of lingered on. And so, and remember that some of the students, to pass classes, they have to do projects for the community. But the community said, this is what we need, this is what you can help us with. So it's a little bit of that in terms of, that's why bottom line is, okay, research for new students should have a requirement for positive impact. And this is achieved by securing participation, and then we adjectivize that in terms of authentic, legitimate participation where they have voice and vote.
Yeah, because the one thing I was going to say is that in the Word document you gave us for the call, you actually specified compartmentalization of minority groups, which I feel reads differently than separation or anti-separation, I should say.
Yeah, probably compartmentalization is better. Yeah. I mean, reflects better what I was trying to say. Also, how far I've gotten in terms of bouncing ideas with myself. That doesn't sound nice, but
yeah. And I love the questions that you asked. The ones that appeal to me the most, of course, is the ideologies, because I'm always interested in, like, you know, personal dispositions that really govern us, and they end up turning people's personal dispositions influence their professional work, and we end up doing things that are based on their own personal assumptions. I think we need to talk about that in higher education, and the fact that we can center that with even like how folks capitulate to the interest of power brokers. I mean, consider the state of Florida right now. I was telling Paula that they're telling us we're going to have to return back to class in person, that they're seriously considering that for the spring. And the only reason why they're doing that is because our governor has fully opened up the state. There are no phases or anything. Bars are open. If you wanted to go to Disney World, they don't have to do a reduced number of people in the park, blah, blah, blah. And now they're making an effort, instead of the people who have all the knowledge, the science, the know-how about this, they're sort of saying, well, let's do what he wants us to do because that's how we get our money. You know, so in all actuality, I think for the new possibilities in higher education practice, one of the things that I think should be discussed is just like, what does leadership look like?
I think that they're trying to tap on that because that's what they say. It's not clear what the future is going to look like, so we can seize the moment. So that's what we can propose and steer. Mm-hmm. That's why they call it pivot. Now is the moment to, because before it was status quo, more everybody was happy, conforming. For whatever reason, people weren't conforming. But now things are unraveled, and you can see the moment with new ideas about where the future is going to go.
Right. I agree with that, because even now in higher education, when you talk about like organizational structure of higher education, or like classically what should a university look like, people either talk about Harvard or they're going to talk about Arizona State, right? Where, you know, the former president of Arizona State talks about what is the new university. And so you have people, you have institutions who think the new university, for example, University of Central Florida, who think the new university is about serving 71,000 students, but not even to fidelity, right? 71,000 students. Yeah, not even to fidelity. Like, what do we hope to accomplish by enrolling so many students and not having the faculty? What do we hope to accomplish by enrolling so many students and not having the support staff and like academic advising? So like, what does that look like? Because it does not, they're missing a critical piece of what your boy at Arizona State talks about in terms of the new university. And they're certainly missing the historical tenets of what researchers have pointed out when they talk about Harvard and when they initially moved over to, from resuscitation to the curriculum model, looking at Germany, this, that, and the other. I think that the new possibilities in higher education have to focus on organizational structure and how we fund them. Because if we continue to be controlled by government funding and in America is becoming more partisan, then we're going to have universities that are like Republican universities and liberal universities. And since we're conceptualizing, why can't we kind of go there?
Yeah, and I think it ties because just to push you
The money.
to play ideas. What you just did, and you know that I agree with you that
again, the only movement, the only motor again is money. Again.
Yeah, but Amanda put it on a different plane, which is the organizational aspect of a university and the funding. Still, there is an ideological component behind. And then still, for the purpose of the paper, we need to move to the second stage. So, we do propose a new organization, or do we stay within, how do we research that in a different way? So we can propose, because, and that's interesting, I'm not quite sure how to, okay, if we take the elements of participation, and we move beyond the unions, which is again the classical component, which co-opted as well. How do we get to change in the new organizational structure that we could foresee participations of faculty, students in the saying of this? If you ask me, Amanda, I'm going to respond, again, I'm just playing. Participation will ensure that new form is going to emerge just because of participation, if it is authentic. There is a voice, and the voice accounts for actual needs, and there is a good intention of responding to those needs. So how we could research so new forms of organization could emerge. That's why I was doing the example. We shouldn't look for the same. I said I would not ask the unions. I would ask who. How do I ask them? How do we involve them in the research? So a conclusion of my research would emerge not only from my academic degree, but reflects their proposal and an actual solution to their needs, or a new form of participation at the university. Again, I'm not talking about burning provost office or eliminating our provost. No. For instance, I mean, student union, is it representative? The needs of the students? We have people in charge of games and partying based there. Are they representative or not? So who should we include? Participants, and again, I'm just taking a topic. Who should represent students? Who should represent faculty? Who should represent junior faculty?
Right.
Because I don't care about starting in 5 years. I know where their interests are and their vision of the future. The future is 5 years away. I just want to check. So I think we can come up with research level repercussions if we look at organizations or funding. in terms of practical terms, what would be the alternative? How could we inform Sisi of her alternatives through research beyond accepting not into everything they say? How can we, I mean, I'm playing, okay, because I don't think she will be part of it, but how can we empower Sisi with a research-based argument with a component of participation, which makes it legitimate and not just another scientific conclusion, that could respond? We can do this better if we do this. I only can say I've done it for 40 years. Participation will give me the clue. This is framing. It's their thing. It's not intellectual. It's their thing. I just accompany whatever decision-making process. I can organize it. I can enlighten. But so if we talk those issues, again, what would be the research? What would be the formula? That would be the challenge of any researcher who cares about education, colleges, problems with funding.
Right. And to be honest with you, to me, that's really important now because let's be honest, higher education, particularly in the United States, is in a lot of flux because of disruption that COVID has brought on, right? And then by virtue of the fact, and not to turn it back to political, a conversation about higher education, but also in looking at the Department of Education and to see to what extent higher education is supported. Let's be real, the traditional classical format of post-secondary education is not supported wholesale across the board. Not when you have the Department of Education looking at doing credential stacking through small certifications, which to me, that I don't think about a UCF or any university. I think more or less like state college and adult extended learning, but that's where the push, that's where they want the push to be. So I think that this is a good opportunity to really talk about that. And what does that mean? Because you treat time like it's not a precious commodity. That like we'll always have time to address these issues, and we use too much time in education. We do things at a glacier pace. So by the time we've addressed the problem, it's no longer a problem anymore. But that's not because we've treated it with some intervention. It's just that invisible control or markets or whatever you want to call it has said people have gotten around how to figure it out without the help of higher education, and now the issue is fill in the blank. So I do think it's I think there should be a way to really talk about this where it doesn't get completely drawn sort of covered in so much theoretical whatever. And I know I call you theory daddy, but that so that people could really see the problem as it is. I think one of the things that appealed to me about this call is that they really want you to kind of articulate whatever you're going to talk about in a very practical way. So I think it's something that we should really consider, because we don't even scratch the surface when we talk about even organizational structure in higher education and how to change that. We capitulate to presidential salaries instead of saying like duplication of efforts in divisions, for example. We never really get that nuance. We only talk about, well, this is how much the president makes, as if like, the president is making so much money, which they make a lot of money, and they don't do as much work for it. But, they also aren't staying in office very long or as presidents. But as if the amount of money that the president is making is going to change, the way the university is operating. But we don't go deep, is my point.
That's exactly what the call is saying. We keep playing issues in research in higher ed that I don't want to be so cynical to say that we know are not going to touch the structure. We don't challenge it. We don't criticize it. Obviously, the call is for critical analysis.
Mhm.
So at least we have to address it as a limitation that we don't do. I think, as you say, we should go further in terms of so what is the practical idea that we have to go about it.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna get some water. It's really hot.
Yeah. Well, Paula, so where does this leave us? Because we can talk all day about higher education.
Well, I have been writing and recording this so we can have support what we said. But I think the practical is going back to a proposal that is really practical, the participation, this authentic. But I have another word, it's authentic. So participation is that is authentic and transcendent. You said something so that it transcends the typical problems that when you get there, then you have another new problem. But look for that essence that is transcendent to the issues
Well,
of
and I think
education.
in one of the research questions that Marcelo wrote, he really did hit on it. And that's when I was like, nail in the middle of my head. That is that's what we need to kind of look at. Because the reality is that kind of conversation is disruptive, but it's also going to force us to say, well, here are the
Participation, authentic, transgressive, transcendent, and you said something else? Transformative. So just ideas. Okay. So I have the brainstorming here. Authentic, transgressive.
Are you writing that, Paula?
Yes, transgressive. Yes. No, transcendent. There were some words I don't know how to write. Transcendent and it says authentic, transgressive. Everything T. Yes. Then when I save everything from Zoom, I will have the video and the chat, and I will send it to you. So it's a brainstorming backup.
Now, I had some other notes.
Pardon? What did you say? So I think it's all very interesting. There are some issues that are farther from like funding is something. I don't know whether we can.
But I had told Claudia and Paula, that was a bad one.
Wait.
Yeah. I would like to explore the international standards for all these kind of projects that have to pass environmental requirements more than the Americans ones. And I know the Nature Conservancy is the organization that has been able to shape how the Aboriginal groups or the Native people or the whatever can express their participation in their own way, basically, according to their own traditions. If it is the elder, if it is assembly, if it is just I would insist in the things of participation. I think that participation guarantees disruption and guarantees outcomes that will benefit people and guarantees different ways of different perspectives.
So international standards.
I mean, I was telling Paula in terms of if I want to know the experience of African Americans at UCF, I would not ask Holmes.
That's true.
I mean, things like that. I don't know who I would ask.
Right.
but somehow it's not that ideological, it's co-opted. But this cultural terms is an elite. It does not represent. So the question comes is like, so who's representative or who decides? Because that's the power. Who decides that represents? I don't have the answer. But because there is a void there, allows the researcher to disengage from that question. And nobody cares about answering either. So that's why I'm thinking, okay, how do people that evaluate large environmental projects go about deciding who has to participate in the evaluation? So it's more that element. Because that's where the power is. This is the voice that's going to say this is good or bad for us. Or this is the voice that's going to say, what if we change this? Why are you laughing at me?
Yes, which is not so much done in South America because they don't care about the voice of native peoples in South America.
We just did in Chile.
Ah, well, you're very democratic. I forgot about
that. No. After 15 years, we just closed the biggest gold mine in the world. Half of it is in Argentina. But the Chilean side is just cannot be done just because of he affected little communities in a valley. But this international law, but again, I would like to look at that just as an example, as a sounding board.
Yes, in the central countries, Europe, yes.
How oppressed people in a very unequal power struggle have been chosen to represent their own. And how is that voice channeled? This is not through experts. Maybe there's nothing there, but I think I'm gonna.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you can find some examples
out of the box, out of the bucket. This one. That's why I said.
I think probably the reason why I was laughing, because I think researchers tend to be zombies when it comes to matters concerning, whose voice we listen to. We just do what we think will get us published, what will get us money. And I think that that's a larger issue. I mean, you could always distill it. That's a larger issue when it comes to the question that you pose, because not that I agree that there needs to be like some uniform way, but should there be standards that we consider? Or yes, but it's not. Imagine this. One thing you said to me before many years ago when I was working on my dissertation, you said, but Amanda, you know these people, you don't even have to go and interview them. You can figure out what you want them to say, yada, yada, yada. But that's the problem in research, right? Like, people find problems that are even fundable because that's who the deans will hire. Not necessarily like this is a real problem and we could provide maybe implications that could speak to plausible solutions. It's just like, there's money in doing this, and we don't really turn, I think, the critical lens on our research approaches. There's some people that talk about decolonizing and that kind of stuff, but it's not to the point where we say, but what are we doing this for? And in your own process, how are you? So that's why I'm laughing, because we can go down a bunny trail on that one.
Yeah. We're gonna go down a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like to explore ideas. I mean, another alternative that's what I cannot find the notes I had was something completely different, which I had put under the big title of humanizing research.
Humanize, yeah, exactly.
Which, of course, I'm not changing my ideology, so many things are going to be going to resonate. But every element of the process of education in higher ed has removed the person. In what sense? Everything that we do in higher ed today is functional metrics, not to learning. So what you just said, these micro credentials have nothing to do with the person. It's that we can make, I don't know, they can advance their career and get a better job and be more profitable and more productive. Nothing to do with the person. It's functional to another goal. So when I said humanizing the processes, the goal is the person. Just like with participation, I am convinced that if the goal, if we recenter the processes of higher ed in the person, students, faculty, whatever, you're gonna have better metrics and better results. That's why I ended up in that going that line. There should be new metrics that account for personal transformation that is not equated to academic success.
So then will the I like that argument. So then will the article or the manuscript explain how we humanize in
Well,
high?
there's a couple of books for how curriculum design affects the human person and the process that affects when from someone from first year from a specific marginalized community comes into higher ed, curriculum design has a huge impact because curriculum design is standardized, is equal for everybody. And you have to adapt and you have to go to writing classes or to support classes or whatever trio program to help you meet the curriculum. Not the other way around.
But you know, it sounds like right now, which I'm on board, that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it sounds like to me like this allows us to have more of a conversation to identify ways in which we can respond to changes in higher education by humanizing whatever, and then going into information on how do we pivot. I'm just trying to connect what you're saying to the cause so I can get that bridge in my mind. That's it.
So the call is still within the field of higher ed. So the questioning, the transgressing part of it, the pushing the edge, what is the call doing, is that curriculum, and I'm just using one example, the same thing could be related to faculty or student services, to dorms, to anything. But curriculum is thought of the most effective so students can advance at a certain rhythm and graduate with success, and we get the point. So the curriculum doesn't serve the learning process as a transformation of the person. Curriculum serves something else. Okay? Teaching practices. I think you can do Zoom classes that are super humane. I mean, I've talked with my student that I was directing the presentation more about their personal stuff than I ever talked with any of my students ever before. And they would ask me for private Zoom sessions so they can tell me about their problems writing, whatever. Because this technological thing forces you to look at the screen and say something. But again, so I say you can humanize anything if you mean to put the person at the center. Okay? Student services, some of them, like Trio, for instance, one of the few ones that I got to know, mean well and try to put the life history, the biography of the person there. But that's a bubble, just like wherever Whitney was, leaders, whatever. Those are bubbles. Those are not that's not the pattern. That's not the mainstream. Those services are for the outliers that ruin my perfect normal curve. Or you don't want me to talk statistics, Amanda.
No, but you're right. Those
Yeah.
need to be normalized somehow.
Yeah, I agree. But we all know like people can do whatever they want to do with the statistics. But it sounds like maybe in my mind, as I'm building this yellow brick road, is that we're contending with this idea that embedded in transforming the university is that we got to go back to, you know, these discourses that merely talk about programming and structure versus the human, and how none of it is really associated, or very little of it, maybe you would argue, is associated with the human condition, if you will.
Yeah, and I'm not saying just, I'm not saying going back to humanities type of college. No,
Okay. 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 Thanks for clearing that up, because that was going to be my next question. But doesn't that look like a okay?
No.
I think you can become a really good technical guy and be very efficient in passing all your courses and struggling with content, and at the same time being super happy and being empowered as a person.
Yes.
Again, where this comes from, okay, there are some books on higher ed that talk about this, how each component of the structure of your journey is not thought in terms of the person, and how it affects, many times negatively, your trajectory. And I can share that as soon as we hang out.
I mean, I'm feeling it now. I'm getting it. I'm at least in my mind.
Again, this is tapping, of course, what is the purpose of higher education, which is, I think, nice to address. But my standards again go to things that already exist. So what is better in terms of quality of life? We can define quality of life, but I include there the sense of empowerment, that I have control of my life and I'm not being passed around, that I have awareness of what I'm doing, and I'm not just being tunneled in a trajectory. And I could equate that to happiness at every stage of my development.
Mm-hmm.
And again, transgressing. Nobody talks about we should produce happy students. No, this is boot camp. That's the approach. If you talk about the index of satisfied societies and communities and happy countries, that's the United Nations. So what is better off? A wealthy country with people that are very polarized, that is very wealthy, that is a lot of money, or a more participatory, equal, where everybody satisfies their needs. I'm talking, of course, Nordic countries, where or developed societies where there's some kind of participation or democratic sense. Again, go Nordic all the time. But if you look at the rankings, there are countries that are in the middle of it. They're not really wealthy, but their governments are caring about. I mean, let's talk about Uruguay, and Paula knows it well. It's one of the most equal countries. It's a small country, no big deal. You know how many people have died in Uruguay with the COVID this week? 50. I mean, because there are really good public health system, blah. So if you really put the person at the center, you have to reshuffle a lot of things. So again, I was thinking about, I sort of put this as plan B's kind of thing. But I was looking at the university and the society were better off if we have a good teacher, engineer, doctor, whatever, which is also super content and grown through the process of, and that the process of growth and being happy and being content and aware and empowered is curtailed by the structures that are sustaining the process right now. Curriculum, teaching, support, fees, expectations, years of graduation, whatever. I mean, there's so much that is well known that someone who is more stable and happy and without pressure is going to have better grades and is going to graduate in 4 or 5 years, whenever they have to graduate. So the support is more writing, better grades, more gym, more football games. Is that really going to affect the whole thing? That's another line.
Yes. But I think it's not far away from participation. Again, it's the person at the center.
Yeah, I mean,
So we can.
and it sounds simple in terms of, I mean, it sounds almost.
Well, we need to
Yes,
problematize
participation is
Yeah.
a key one.
I think. But I love the idea of like dehumanization because the reality is that's not the focus in higher education really at all.
We can take that into research as well.
You're right about that. But yeah, so I'm seeing clearly, you know, the direction and the aim. Just what are the next steps so that we can at least work on the giving them an abstract so they can determine whether or not, you know, it fits their calling to proceed forward with writing the full paper.
Yeah. Today is October the 10th. I mean, you ladies are much busier than me, although.
And so how is your work, but your work application, how was that?
I didn't apply.
You didn't?
No, because the dean that has to select the three guys that go to the provost, I found out that it's a. I mean, when I looked at the details, who I have to send all this material, who was the procedure, I hadn't looked at that. It's a former priest that I knew very well in the 80s. He's the dean and it's the biggest college in the university. So I texted him, and he said, "No, we have the person already. This is just a moment."
Yeah.
Which is usually the case.
Yeah.
And so that's why I didn't do it. But I have 2 or 3 little things that are using a lot of my time. Not too difficult.
Yes, you are the person with most
But
available, but you have to tell me what you need.
But what I was trying to get to was, can we set a deadline? I wish that in 2 weeks we could have an abstract. Because of I'm kind of, the next 2 weeks are going to be busy for me, so that's why I would like to push it a little bit more, maybe to the 27th, 28th, to have a draft. I mean,
yes, that week I will be free. We don't have classes on the 26th that week. We will be free, so we can meet again if you need.
I mean, we should meet a couple of times. We share documents.
Yeah.
I mean, saying a deadline so we have a final version.
Right. I be perfectly honest with you, Saturday for me is easier to meet.
Can we push it into
Friday?
That week, Paul, let's have classes. So the 31st Saturday, the deadline.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Maybe we can meet once, maybe the previous week, 24th, because Saturday is better. I don't know, Paula.
24th, yes, 24th, yes, I can.
See
because I'm preparing classes generally, and it's just work. It's just work. I can do it.
Would that be okay?
Yeah. Yes, it's 24th. Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for me.
24th is Saturday. Yeah, Saturday.
And then the 31st final deadline.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to. No, I will. I'm gonna try. I will this week. I'm gonna send you a couple of books that on this humanization of higher ed kind of thing.
That'd be helpful.
Go. There are no practical solutions to anything
Okay.
there.
I'm down.
Just you don't have to read it, but that's where I'm coming from. Do that, and also try to put some ideas in writing regarding
completely agree with you.
Standards that exist regarding the tuition. Maybe they help us, maybe they're. But but this idea of moving away from new public management kind of thing.
Which, let's be real, that's also a major conversation in higher education right now.
Well, with the humanization, I was trying to contest that because somehow it doesn't fit into the metric.
Yeah, yeah.
In my other notes, I could never find, I had like, what about new metrics that account for these things? I'm not saying that grades are not, it's not important that they advance, but if you install some other metrics that disrupt the logic of the new public management and also demand from the schools something else regarding the program.
Let me see, I'm gonna link to an article I read literally last week. It came out of Harvard, talking about neoliberalism in education.
Amanda?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now we lost you.
I'm sorry.
We lost you. Yes. Yeah, you are.
Sorry.
Okay. Amanda?
I'll send it to you all. I was gonna add a link to the article. I gotta look through too many things. But anyway, it might help us.
Yes, articles, please. Books are like too demanding. But anyway, I will, all the ideas are wonderful.
Okay.
The ones I understand the most are these about participation. The ones I see further away are those about funding and political, not from politics, from that idea of everyday life politics that we do anyway, in our work, with our positioning, but those policies that do not depend, that depend on states or the government running, those things are, I think, farther away from our grasp. And it all depends on.
No, I think
Sorry?
I think it's gonna be good for them that we just gotta have a strong argument about.
Yes.
I mean, like, okay. So this is amazing, but I like chopping it up with you all. This conversation was great in terms of thinking about.
Yes, great.
And I've told Amanda that I've always admired and I'm always amazed at her capacity to bullshit with words. I had never had, and in terms of how to sell it. So I would still be relying on the selling of the abstract in terms of
the selling
words, the punchline, and all that.
How much are you asking for this sell?
He's full of shit. So I criticized Joe Biden, and his campaign allowed me to meet with him because I was just like, hello, Jill, thank you for doing, your speech in the classroom. But like, these teachers are especially when we talk about what's going on in, underserved communities. That's where the schools are being shut down in Orlando, right? Because these kids coming to school sick, okay? And the parents are like, I gotta work, And so I got first I got a weird email and I was like, this is not real. I deleted it. And I got a call. And it was just like, is this Amanda Wilkerson, Dr. Wilkerson? I was like, who is this? And lady, I don't know how this woman got my number. Because I went to the campaign event that I met him at the airport before he flew from Kissimmee. He flew from Orlando, but the executive airport. So
Joe Biden, the Joe Biden.
Yes.
No, Amanda, you're.
I
We
was
can't
showing.
reach you. We can't reach your level.
No, no, listen. So she says, "Oh, I'm the political director, the regional political director for Joe Biden, and for what I is, we saw that you tweeted his wife, and he wants to meet you." And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
and then she was like, he's coming to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to a campaign event in COVID. She said, no, 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 it's a one-on-one. And I was
Oh,
like, okay, can I bring him my book? And she was like, you got a book? Yeah, bring him the book. I still don't know why these people got in touch with me. He spoke to me for like 5 minutes, and I was like, this is amazing.
You know why?
Tell me.
There are two alternative reasons. And I think maybe it's a compounded effect. It's your call first.
it's your aura. You have you do not belong to this world. It's another.
And the compounding is that just shows you, that's empirical data of your capacity to bullshit in a Twitter.
You were going to say something real snotty because the first one was nice. That's your call. I was like, oh, okay.
He's jealous. You're jealous.
Formal is kind of, because I don't.
Bernie, could you meet Bernie? I want to meet Bernie. I like him more.
Look at that. I am convinced it's your call. I have told you that before. But bullshit just took you to the next president of the United States. That's the quality of your bullshit. And I repeat, I'm amazed. I admire it. I don't have it.
Yeah, no, the normal people, no, we don't have that aura that you have. You're born with a special.
If there is a Zoom session that you're going to do on that or a webinar, please let me register.
No, you cannot teach it.
You know what you're saying is only
transferable to others. No, you're born like that, and some people transfer it some others.
Your
telling me I'm a good bullshitter.
Your call includes that skill.
No, you're a skillful person, for sure.
So
make things happen.
So Paula, you took notes.
Yeah, well.
Can you share them?
Humbly. Yes, they are in on an email. When we finish the meeting, I'm going to download the video, upload it to YouTube, and you will be able to listen.
Okay, I will send you at least one of the books that I read at the putting the person back.
Books, but it's too long.
Okay. You can flip
an article. Okay. What is the shortest? Professor?
No, let me look up if there is any article.
An article. Okay.
Okay.
You're the boss. Okay. I follow you. You're gurus of this topic. You're the gurus. No. I am humbly. I humbly thank you for this invitation.
This
is to this exquisite and elitist group of academicians with so much.
Let me put back the person into this.
Vision.
I really love you, ladies.
Vision and mission. You have everything.
I really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise. All right, you guys.
Yes, you're wonderful, Amanda.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you. Big kiss.
Big kiss to you all. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.